In 2023, the tight end position was an absolute roller coaster. I don't think we saw a lot of what was going to happen. Travis Kelce being picked in the first or second round and turning out to being a bust because of that. From seeing one of the greatest rookie tight end seasons of all time, actually one of the greatest rookie receiving seasons of all time from Sam Laporta. What did you experience from the tight end position this season? And whatever it may be, we just need one more big week, one more big performance from some of the guys that we're going to talk about here in my Week 18 Start and Sit analysis. Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? We need to try and figure out the tight ends that are going to have the best opportunity to score us some points here in Week 18. And now the tight end position has been super difficult to figure out all year long. If you're new to Week 18 content, if you did not see our running back show or our quarterback show that we put out for Week 18, then this format is going to look a lot different than what we have done in the past. For this format in Week 18, it's not about diving deep and breaking down the numbers and finding tendencies. It's about finding guys that are just going to be on the field. So to kick off the analysis, I'm going to list out all the teams that are playing for something this week and will likely keep their starters on the field. Then we've got a few teams that aren't playing for anything and maybe sitting a lot of guys. And we've got a couple of teams that are just kind of right in the middle. They could be playing for maybe one spot higher, but realistically, it doesn't matter because they've already locked down a position. Let's go ahead and jump into it though. Let's start off with the teams that are playing for something. Now, there are a few teams here that have something to play for, but don't have a tight end that we would be interested in playing. But the good news is there are a few tight ends that are absolutely smash starts because not only is it a good matchup and they're an elite tight end, but their team is playing for something and likely they're going to be on the field for the entire game. But then you talk about the teams that have nothing to play for this week. Isaiah Likely with Baltimore, David Njoku with Cleveland, George Kittle with San Francisco, and of course, Travis Kelce with Kansas City. Those are some elite tight end options that we've been relying on all season that now here in Week 18 may not play that much. And then you scroll down and you've got two teams that could barely change what they're looking at right now. Los Angeles already has announced that they're probably going to be sitting some of their starters, even though they could drop from the 6th seed to the 7th seed. And for the Detroit Lions, they're playing for a potential jump up to the number 2 seed, even though they would need losses by Philadelphia and Dallas to make it happen. Could we see their starters? Maybe for a little bit, but it's not locked in stone yet. For Pittsburgh and Baltimore, Isaiah Likely is probably trending more towards being red than being yellow at this point, and that's just because his risk of being out there for the entire game just doesn't seem to be worth it. They are going to sit Lamar Jackson. They've already made that known, but they really, as of this recording, hadn't made an announcement on whether anybody else will be sitting in this matchup. Keep an eye on that over the next few days. If Isaiah Likely plays, he may be worth the risk if he's going to be out there for at least half the game. But I don't even think that could end up happening. And for Pat Freiermuth, he really hasn't done anything with Mason Rudolph under center. Kenny Pickett was his boy. Those two were connected, and Kenny Pickett was always looking for the Muth. But now that Mason Rudolph is under center, it just doesn't feel like it's the same way. If you're trying to run with Pat Freiermuth, you're hoping he scores a touchdown. For Houston and Indianapolis, CJ Stroud returning last week was excellent for Dalton Schultz, even if the performance wasn't what we would have needed for the fantasy playoffs. However, this week going up against Indianapolis, a team that is allowing 13 fantasy points per game to the tight end position, one of the most in the league, Dalton Schultz could find himself right in that area where he gives you a really safe floor, but a really nice ceiling to go with it. And we know Houston is also playing for something. Tampa Bay and Carolina, not really going to have anything I'm looking at here. We've talked about Cade Otton and the fact that he's on the field all the time, but he doesn't get targeted. Hayden Hurst has not returned from his concussion, and Tommy Tremble has been the guy since then, but he isn't giving you any fantasy viable performances. This matchup isn't going to have anything worth it. This would be an awesome matchup for David Njoku, but unfortunately it looks like he's not really going to be playing all that much anyway. And as of this recording, he actually had missed Wednesday's practice with an illness and wasn't really feeling great. I would not be surprised, given the fact that they're locked into their current position, if David Njoku just rests this week. If you're looking for a little bit of a flyer option though, you could potentially go with Tanner Hudson. I don't love this matchup for him. This is a really tough defense he'd be going up against. The targets were there last week, even if the production isn't really fantasy viable. If he were to get those targets once again with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase banged up, then he might be worth it. But he brings a little bit closer to high risk in a red area than he does for that yellow medium risk. So if you're going to roll with him, yeah, he could get 6 or 7 targets, but he may only give you 4 fantasy points. For right now, I'm going to list Sam Laporta as yellow because the Detroit Lions have not made any indications on whether or not they plan on resting their starters. And knowing Dan Campbell and the way this Lions team works, I wouldn't be surprised if they go out there and they play at least half the game. Now, a couple weeks ago, Sam Laporta didn't do much against this Minnesota defense, which has been good against tight ends this season. I'm not really jumping on board with Sam Laporta having a huge week, given the fact that he might not even be out there for the entire game. But risking Sam Laporta over some other options may end up being worth it, especially if the Lions don't give any indication on whether or not he will play this week. I don't really have any interest in Tyler Conklin this week, but Hunter Henry could end up being an interesting start if he were to be healthy this week. We know that Bailey Zappi looked his way quite a bit when he was on the field. Now, can he make it out there this week? That is yet to be determined. It sounded like he was pretty close last week, but ultimately ended up being inactive. We'll keep an eye on that. And if for some reason Hunter Henry ends up being active this week, we'll talk about it on Sunday when I do my start and sit show for our members. Juwan Johnson has been on absolute fire, 3 straight games with a touchdown, and now he's going up against Atlanta that allows 13 fantasy points to the tight end position, one of the highest marks in the league. Juwan Johnson's going to get his looks this week, and finding the end zone once again could absolutely be in play in a game where these two teams are fighting to get to Tampa Bay for that #1 spot in the NFC South. But if you're trying to play Kyle Pitts this week, good luck, because I'm not feeling good about it. I've got him at the very end of my rankings, and you'll see that here in a couple of minutes, because once again, when you're taking a look at what tight ends could end up doing something for you, we have to go with guys that we know will be on the field a majority of the time. And that's really the only check mark that Kyle Pitts fits. For Jacksonville and Tennessee, we have a safe start and we have a risky start. For Evan Ingram, he may be one of the safest starts at the tight end position this week. We know he's going to get targets, and we know he's one of the main pass catchers and really the safest pass catcher right now for Jacksonville, who is still trying to fight for that AFC South crown. Evan Ingram should see a decent amount of targets once again. And for Chigiooko, he definitely could be a guy that puts together a decent week. It seems like when he gets the targets, he's averaging over 10 yards per reception, and he's showing some pretty big plays. But the question mark becomes, how often will he actually be targeted, and do those turn into fantasy points? He would be one of the riskier bets that you could take this week. Trey McBride may be the best tight end play that you could make all week. And down the stretch here, he is absolutely solidified that he deserves to be in your fantasy lineup as one of the most consistent tight ends in all of football since week 6 or 7 when he really took over as the starter there. So Trey McBride, absolutely lock him in this week. Really nice floor, really high ceiling. Arizona is trying to play spoiler once again, but this time for Seattle. Cole Kmet definitely has some high risk for me this week because he's been banged up and really isn't at 100% right now. So I'm not really sure what we're going to be getting from Cole Kmet this week, and we'll continue to keep an eye on that as the week goes. But for Tucker Kraft in a really good matchup, a guy that's been getting peppered with targets down the stretch here, Green Bay's still alive. Not only could they potentially squeak into the playoffs here, but they could beat the Bears in the process. I think the offense will be just fine. I know they're not going to be able to run the ball as much as they would like or as efficiency as they would like. Tucker Kraft is going to be a big part of winning this game. I'm really not sure if Travis Kelce is going to play at all this week, and I would be shocked if he did play, if he played more than one quarter. So he's going to bring some risk this week, and honestly, I don't think I'm going to keep him in my lineup. Gerald Everett also going to bring some risk because he's been a guy that has had some decent matchups as of late and really hasn't done a whole lot with it. If you're looking for a fantasy tight end that can get you 6 points, maybe 5, then Gerald Everett would probably be your guy. Even with a really good matchup against the Denver Broncos, who can't seem to stop a tight end to save their life, no way I'm banking on Austin Hooper or any other Las Vegas tight end on doing anything this week. The position has basically been unimaginable this season. A couple of decent performances from Mayer, but outside of that, not nearly enough to try and start in week 18 when we're playing for fantasy championships. Dallas Goedert and Darren Waller are definitely a matchup this week that brings the most potential. Both of these guys are going to be on the field. The New York Giants are trying to play spoiler against the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles want to get a win, hoping that Dallas also loses so they can jump back up to the number 2 seed. Everybody is going to be out on the field for both of these teams. And when we take a look at what they have done recently, I would be willing to bet that the quarterbacks for each team are going to be looking towards Goedert and Waller. In this matchup, there's not going to be a whole lot to see. Now, we know that some starters for the LA Rams are going to be resting. If Tyler Higbee were to play, but we see like Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Kyren Williams, Matthew Stafford all sitting, maybe it does seem like Tyler Higbee could be a decent start for us. I don't know if I'm going to jump all on board with that though, because it's still San Francisco, and even if they're facing a lot of second teamers, it's still not going to be the easiest matchup in the world. And then for George Kittle, I would be shocked if he played it all this week. If you own him, I'm not starting him. Dallas is fighting to keep that number 2 seed. Jake Ferguson's going to be a big part of that, going up against Washington, who hasn't done great against tight ends this season. Jake Ferguson likely will see a decent amount of targets. We've seen some up and down performances from him this year, but we know based on the tight end position and what we're seeing this week that Jake Ferguson would end up being one of the best options available. Man, Dalton Kincaid at one point this season looked to be maybe even a bigger breakout than Sam Laporta. He was absolutely being targeted like crazy, and then it all just disappeared. Some of it may have to do with Dawson Knox. Some of it may have to do with changes that they've made in the offense this year, but whatever it may be, Dalton Kincaid is not even close to being talked about in a matchup that honestly they probably should be talking about more. All right, and for my tight end rankings, I'm only going to go with the top 12 this week because honestly, if you're trying to find anybody outside the top 12, just take a look at the video, listen to what I had to say, and hopefully you find a guy that you could feel decent about. Now, really, again, this week, it's about finding the guys that are going to be on the field the most and may have the best opportunity. It isn't necessarily dealing with upside. It's what can we get? Who do we think is going to be the best opportunity to win? We know guys like Trey McBride, Jake Ferguson, Evan Ingram, Dallas Goedert, Dalton Schultz. Those are going to be the main guys you look at this week. Guys with the best opponent that they're going up against, guys with the most to lose this week, guys with the most to play for, guys that we want on the field. Those are going to be the guys. Now, Sam Laporta is going to come in at number 6 because once again, Detroit has not made an announcement on whether or not they are resting starters. As of right now, it seems like they are going to go out and they are going to play for it on Sunday, which could be good and it could be bad at the same time. Fingers crossed nobody gets hurt, but as of now, we'll continue to monitor that. Sam Laporta is going to be a guy that even if they don't announce that they're resting starters, at some point during the game, they could end up being pulled, and because of that, he falls a lot lower. Now, here in the back half of the top 12, we're taking a look at a couple of guys that have some decent floor and some guys that have some higher ceiling. A guy like Tucker Kraft has a decent floor for me. A guy like Juwan Johnson has a super high ceiling, but his floor may not end up being as high. So it's really, what are you looking for? Are you looking for the high upside play, or are you looking for that guy that really you just need a few points out of? If you're just looking for a few points, then maybe Gerald Everett fits that bill for you. Cole Kmet right now, I've got him inside the top 12, even though it's not looking great now that he could play this week, but you never know. Chicago probably wants to try and spoil whatever Green Bay has left in the tank for 2023 and, well, 2024 now, and because of that, he may end up getting out there, but we'll have to keep an eye on the practice reports. And then a guy like Darren Waller and Kyle Pitts, we have no idea what we could end up getting from either of these guys, but we know they're going to be on the field, and because of that, they bring a little bit of a floor, even if the upside isn't what we would like. Headliner Nation, hopefully you all have appreciated the videos all season long. This is my final official start and sit video for the season though. It's been a great run this season. We've had a whole lot of fun. We've seen things out of the channel that we could have never imagined, but I'll guarantee you that 2024 is going to be even bigger for the fantasy headliners. Stick around all off season. Do not unsubscribe from the channel and do not stop watching the videos, because the content that we put out in the off season is just as important as what you watch during the season. For now though, signing off officially for the last start and sit video of the season. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you all in the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.